QuickBooks Online 2021 Reoccurring Transactions Bill Form. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Online 2021. Here we are in our QuickBooks Online practice file. We're taking a look at reoccurring transactions. One place you can locate these, of course, is in the cog up top, and then go into the lists area and the reoccurring transactions. We did a test transaction last time with a bill. We're going to continue on with the bill transactions for this presentation as one form of reoccurring transaction. If I hit the drop down up top, then we've got our information in terms of the general forms. We're going into the vendor forms over here. Note that the forms for the payments type forms in the vendor section will typically be either a bill form, or we could use some kind of form that's going to decrease the checking account directly, that being either a check form or expense form. We can have a reoccurring transaction for any of them. So you might want to think just how it's going to fit into your normal process. If you're using an accrual process, then you might want to then enter it as a recurring transaction in the bill form. That then increases the accounts payable. Once it's in accounts payable, you can then determine, when you actually want to pay it and then pay the bill, as opposed to the recurring transaction that's going to happen right out of the checking account here. You also want to be considering what's going to happen if you have bank feeds lined up with it as well. How do the bank feeds line up? If you enter the bill, that gives you a double check that you enter the transaction on your side. Bank feeds then kind of double check it as they clear the bank, possibly to pay the bill. Or you can use the bank feeds as kind of like a double check if you enter a check or expense on your side, and then use the bank feeds to basically double check the items that have cleared for those items. So let's go into the bill form. Let's enter like a standard bill. Let's assume we have the rent here. So the rent's going to be kind of a standard bill. We would expect it to be, the same thing on a monthly basis. So we would then first create the bill. So I'm just going to create a mock renter. Just going to call it Mr. Landlord. Mr. Landlord. And then we're going to save that. And I didn't spell it. Landlord. Mr. needs a dot to be proper. All right, and then we'll make the terms. I'll say we'll just keep the terms as is. Now I'm going to enter the bill date, and I'm going to enter mine and the current date, which is going to be 02. Well, let's make this in the prior month. Let's make this 11 or 12 31 20. And so that's going to be the bill. And then when I make the reoccurring transaction, I'm going to have to do it, the first one due in the current date. So I'm going to go down here, and this is going to be rent. So it's going to be rent and lease. And we'll say this is for $1,000. So there we have it. We want this to be reoccurring now. We're going to say this is going to happen every month. We want the bill to be repeated every month. And then possibly that'll be give us a reminder that we can then double check and then actually go in and pay the bill. So the bill itself kind of acts like a reminder in that case. So if I then say I want to make this reoccurring, this item pops up kind of to the top of the bill now for our reoccurring information. So we got the landlord, the schedule. We can have it scheduled to just be entered, or we can make it a reminder to kind of remind us, or we can make it an unscheduled, basically kind of maybe acting more as a template in that case. Now, if it's a bill, we might just want to schedule it. If it's reoccurring and I know it's reoccurring, I might just want to schedule it and then let it enter the bill automatically. And then I'll double check it, because once it's entered, then I will then sort the bills. If I have a custom of sorting the bills to determine the ones that need to be paid, then I can sort them and pay them. As opposed to a reminder, which I might not need as much on the bill side, because it's not going to be affecting the checking account directly, which I might use a reminder more often if I use a check type of form, right? If it's a reminder, it's going to remind me to enter the bill, and then I'll have to pay the bill. So if I use the bill, I could use the bill kind of as the reminding tool by basically scheduling the bill, allowing it to record automatically, and then sort my bills, if that's my customary process, to see when they're going to be due. So create 1 day in advance. So I'm going to say, or create days in advance. So I'm going to try to say 5 days in advance. Mr. Landlord, well, let's make it 1 day in advance. And then we can have it being done monthly, weekly, daily. So the typical method would probably be monthly. And then on day, let's say the first day, it says on the day, first, second, third, and then the first, and then of every month, of every 1 month. So I'm going to say every 1 month here. And then we're going to say the start date. I have to have the earliest date I can start this on is the current date in QuickBooks Online. If I try to put something prior to that date, then it won't let me. So I'm going to try to put the earliest date I can, 19, and then we'll be able to see it when it becomes due. And then the end date here, I'm going to say none, or we could say by or after. I'm going to keep it as none. Now, of course, this is a little strange because I'm entering the transaction a little bit in the past, but I'm trying to keep it at the first date that I can do it in order to record it, so that I can come back and kind of check it once it's been, that date has then passed. So I'm going to say save the template. It says this transaction has one or more missing class fields. That's okay. I'm going to say that's okay. And there we have it. So now we've got our information up top. For the miscellaneous transaction, this screen can be found by going to the cog up top, go into the lists and the reoccurring transactions, and you can go in here. If you start to use these transactions a lot, you probably want to go in here more often and kind of check them out. So this one's set up, we can see as a reminder. I'm sorry, this one's set up as a scheduled as opposed to the reminder item that we had last time. We can filter now for the items. We could say I want to see the ones that are scheduled or reminders. So for example, scheduled items. And then we have the type of items. In our case, they're all bills. So we could say the bill. And then apply. And then we got our filter here. We then have our information to the right. We can, of course, edit it. We can hit the drop down. We can use it. So I might use this transaction here. If I select that, it'll select a bill using that information to populate it for the bill we set up. Then closing that back out, I'm going to say, do you want to leave without saving? Yes. And then we can go back in here, duplicate it, pause it, skip the next date, or of course, we can delete it. I've got the next date here at 3/1. I'm going to try to adjust that. I'm going to edit this now. Let's go in and edit it. I'm going to try to make it sooner. Let's make this instead of monthly, daily, and then the start date on 2/19. So then I'm going to say save the template. This transaction has one or more missing class fields. I'm not going to use classes. That's okay. And so there we have it. So now the next one's on 2/20. So then we can take a look at it once it becomes past due. Now, obviously, the fact that it's a bill that we entered, remember that we could sort the bills that we owe by going to the drop down here and then going to the pay bill screen. And it'll have the information, this is where we might sort the bills that are going to be basically outstanding that we're going to owe. So once then the bill is recorded, we maybe have a custom of going in here and sorting the bills. You can also sort them by going to the expenses tab and then going to the vendors area here and then looking up who you might owe for a particular bill. Let's try another one. I'm going to add another one, and this one I'm going to make a bill type of form. Let's imagine this is going to be insurance. So I'm just going to call it insurance company. So I'm going to say insurance company, and I'm going to add that. And so we'll save that, and I'll do the similar kind of process here. Now this might go to a prepayment, but for our purposes, I'm just going to call it insurance expense. An insurance expense, because we're going to imagine we pay it basically monthly. And once again, let's set up a recurring transaction. This time, I'm going to say insurance company. This time, I'm going to keep it as scheduled. I'm going to make it a reminder. So it's not going to actually record it. It's going to remind me days before the transaction. I'm going to say 1 day before the transaction. Once again, normally it would probably be monthly or possibly more than that, possibly yearly or something. I'm going to put it for daily just so that we can have it scheduled for a next day. So every day, I'm going to say the date is going to be for 02/19/21, and I'll just keep it going. And then it's for the mailing address, the terms. So that looks good. I'm going to put the amount down here at then the, let's say 190. And so there we go. So now we got a scheduled transaction. Let's save that template. I'm going to save the template. Has no class field. That's okay. We're not dealing with the class tracking. And so there we have it. So then if I go back up top, I go to my cog up top. We're going to go to the recurring transactions, closing up the hamburger. I'm going to remove the filters. You could do so by Xing out these items, or you could go to the filter up top and you can go to all. And I'm going to say all here and apply. So now we've got our bill for the insurance. That's a bill. It's going to be every day, so we could see the next due date, which is going to be 2/20, which for me is tomorrow. And then we've got the other item here, which is the scheduled item, also due tomorrow. Let's try another one. Another one, a common one is we're going to pay like a loan payment off. So if I hit the plus button, let's say we're going to add another bill. And the problem with the loan payment is there's interest and principal portion. So let's say this is bank, the bank loan is the vendor. And we're going to say then tab, save it. And we'll do a similar kind of thing down here. Now, oftentimes we're going to have the loan payable that's going to go down. We're going to imagine we have a payable on the books, which we don't now, so I'm going to add it. So I have a loan. When I pay off the loan's going to be going down, and that's going to be a liability type of account. Other current liability, loan payable. And then we're also going to have an interest portion. So we would have to take this information from like an amortization table, saying the loan goes down by $975, let's say. And then the interest portion, interest paid. I think interest expense would be a better term, but let's say interest paid. There we have it. Now we've got this breakout. So the full amount of payment was $1,000, we're going to say, but we had to break it out the $975 and the $25. We would like to reoccur this because this is a reoccurring transaction. We're going to pay $1,000 every month. But the breakout between interest and principal will differ every month, and we typically will need an amortization table to know what that is. So in this situation, I want to make it reoccurring, but I don't want it just to record the transaction because I'm going to have to go in and change this allocation. So if I was to make this reoccurring, I might then say, okay, it's a loan payment. And for this one, I wouldn't just schedule it. I'd have to make it a reminder because I want it to be a reminder so that I can go in and do the proper allocation between the interest and principal. But I would like it to tell me that, hey, a loan payment is becoming due. I'll keep the same for 1 day and loan payment. And again, it would probably be monthly, but I'm going to say daily just so we can go back into it and see it once it becomes due. Start date, I'm going to say 02/19/21. And so same kind of activity there. I'm going to say save the template and say yes. So there we have it. Notice when I'm saving the template, I didn't actually record, the transaction. If I go back in there and take a look at it now, we're going to go to the cog up top. We're going to go to the reoccurring transactions, which we're here already. And now we've got this loan payment. And again, the difference there is we would put it in possibly as a reminder so that we could go back in and properly allocate the interest and principal. Another example might be like a software company, an app that you pay every month. So you might do that with a bill or with an expense or check type form. We're going to keep with the bill example here. This is going to be software company tab, like an Intuit possibly. And then, because they're the owner of QuickBooks, we're going to go through this. And then we're going to say that this is going to be computer and internet, we'll say. And we're going to say that this is for 150. So once again, this would be a reoccurring transaction, we would think. I'm going to say reoccurring and software company. And this one I would probably simply schedule if it were a bill. If I entered it as a check, then I might use a reminder. Vendor here, again, I'm going to make it daily so that I can see it, see it past due. We'll go back into it and check it. And then the start date is going to be then 02/19/21. 02/19/21. So there we have it. And so that looks good. And so I'm going to save the template there and say yes. And so there we have that. So now if we go back in, we're back into the transactions cog here, product and services. I'm sorry, not products and services, reoccurring transactions. And then we've got that reoccurring transaction. That might be a common kind of thing that would happen on a reoccurring basis. Okay, so we may go back in there at a later point then after the time period has passed, and then we can check out what these transactions or what this reoccurring list does as time passes. Also, again, remember that we didn't actually record, we saved the template here. If you wanted to use any of these items to record the transaction, You could say hit this item, and I want to say use this. We're going to use this to actually record the transaction, recording the bill, this one being for the bank loan at 12/31. And then I can say I want to save it, save and close, for example, save and close, and it being a bill. Then if I go to the drop down up top and we go to the pay bills, now we've got that bill kind of information that populates here to sort the bills. People that use this pay bill all the time, then this is a familiar place to be, and that's where the bill forms are useful. If you don't use the pay bills all the time and you use bank feeds all the time, you don't have as many transactions most likely in that situation. Then you might use recurring transactions directly with the expense forms or check forms.